implementation of SADC programs and regional priorities. However, as this term is coming to an end, it is crucial to evaluate his leadership, particularly in the context of peace and security within the region. And to understand more on this, I am joined by a peace and security expert, Dr. Gabriel Malebang. Doc, thank you for joining me this afternoon and welcome.
Thank you very much, sir.
Right. Let's just kick it off here. What is the current state of peace and security here in the Sadc region?
Thanks for the question. I'd say the region is fairly stable.
Okay.
In general terms, except for the instability that we've seen in Mozambique and the DRC.
Right.
We've also had, particularly in the context of SADC,
right.
some interventions in Lesotho,
okay,
and also in the Kingdom of Eswatini, where those have remained on the radar of SADC. But overall, I'd say the region is fairly stable as compared to other regions on the continent.
Right, right. And, you know, the Angolan president, who's the current chair, is actually in Botswana. Perhaps if we just give context to the significance of his visit to Botswana. Thank
you for that question.
Right.
As stated in your opening remarks, the chair was elected during the Summit of Heads of State last year.
August, yes.
And the summit takes place annually.
Okay.
And during the summit, a head of state of a particular country based on a roster is elected to take up the chairmanship for a tenure of 1 year.
Okay.
So SADC has what is called a troika system.
Okay.
The troika means that as he's elected chair, being the incumbent, he takes leadership in he takes decisions in concert with the outgoing chair and the incoming chair in what is called a troika.
Oh, right, right,
so which means he's not like the sole decision maker. This system was designed to ensure that in between the summits from August to the following August, decisions are taken in a timely manner,
okay,
with delegated responsibilities to those three leaders.
Okay.
And there's also, this is a troika at the heads of state level.
Right.
But still at heads of state, there's another troika for the organ on politics, defense and security.
Okay.
So where I think currently is the president of Zambia. He was elected in the last summit, where he's also joined by the outgoing and the incoming chair in taking decisions.
Right.
So the significance of the visit, as you ask, is that once in a year during the term of such a chair, they visit the secretariat to be appraised on, you know, the state of some of the initiatives and implementation of decisions that were taken in the previous summits. So I believe that is what President Lourenço is here to do. Yes.
Right, right. And maybe just for me to understand this, how does the chair get elected? What's the criteria used to elect a chair?
Yes, as you know, SADC is an organization that is comprised of 16 member states.
Right, right.
So there is a roster system whereby in alphabetical order, these countries are expected to take up this chairmanship. But that is like a textbook scenario.
Okay.
But in reality, you find that certain member states are unable to take up the chairmanship or the leadership when their turn comes for a multiplicity of reasons.
Right.
Some, it may be that because it's quite expensive to take up the responsibility of chairmanship. All the meetings, statutory meetings for all areas. As you know, SADC is an organization which mirrors the governments of its member states in terms of portfolios. Right. If you have a defense function, trade, agriculture, and all of that.
Right.
So which means all the meetings for all these portfolios or thematic areas are hosted by the country that's chairing. among other things. And most member states are still struggling with their own state building and other challenges, and they may not have the political will to actually take up the responsibility. So then it would be passed to the country that is next on the list.
On the roster.
That's why then it would seem like it's a bit messed up as compared to the original roster that was put forward.
Right. And, speaking of the Angolan president, João Lourenço, how effectively, in your view and your understanding of peace and security, did the president leverage SADC's mechanisms and resources to address conflict and promote peace within this region?
Thanks for the question, Joey. I think it's important for us to explain that it would be a bit misleading to imply that a particular chairperson can really make some sweeping, differences or achievements within the 1 year that they are given as their tenure. Which leads me to a point that perhaps it's time that SADC revised or reviewed the 1 year tenure to possibly increase it maybe to 2 years, so that a particular chair who would have, maybe put as his priorities particular issue areas is able to see them through in a comprehensive manner. But in this instance, President Lourenço was spearheading what is called the Luanda process.
Right.
The Luanda process is a mediation initiative for the conflict, particularly between the heads of state of the DRC and Rwanda. So he has been a champion for there to be a mediated resolution to those tensions which played out publicly between those two neighboring states. And he was also appointed the African Union champion for peace and security on the continent. And he assumed the chairmanship of SADC already in those roles.
Right.
So then I believe he did his best to try and ensure that there's some sort of a peaceful resolution to the tensions between those two heads of state.
Right.
And significantly, we saw the deployment of the SADC mission to the DRC in December 2023. And this happened during the tenure of President Lourenço.
Yes, sir.
And I'm not quite sure the extent to which he influenced such an outcome. But of course, it happened during his tenure. And it was in response to the resurgence of the menace of the M23 rebels in the eastern DRC. With regard to Mozambique, which is also another very important issue on the agenda of SADC, it's during his tenure that a decision was taken for there to be a drawdown, leading to an eventual withdrawal of troops in Mozambique, which is scheduled to take place in July. So I believe all those initiatives are still on course. Whether we can call them achievements or not, it's another issue.
Right. And when we look ahead, what would you say are the main challenges and also opportunities that an incoming chairperson of SADC in sustaining and advancing the organization's efforts towards peace and security within the region are?
Well, one would be the lack of funding generally for peace and security initiatives. I'm made to understand that as part of the Regional Development Fund, initiatives were put in place, or efforts were put in place to develop what is called a peace fund, to ensure that there is funding to support deployment of the SADC standby force when the need arises. So member states also tend to lack political will when it comes to deployment of peace missions or peace operations, as well as to provide the necessary equipment. Sometimes they are unable to provide the equipment. For example, when you look at the mission in the DRC, the DRC is a very difficult terrain because they don't have proper roads and they have a rainforest there. So there's need for sophisticated air capabilities and other military hardware to be able to effectively ward off the rebel threat in such an instance. Then this now puts pressure on SADC member states to, while simultaneously dealing with deployment in Mozambique, to also dedicate resources towards the DRC. So there's that financial component, the issue of political will, also human security issues, where issues of women and vulnerable children who suffer the most when you have such conflicts. These are issues that I believe the incoming chair should look out for. And in the case of the DRC is what in academic circles is called a protracted social conflict. This means that it's a conflict that's intractable, that is, it's stubborn to resolve because it has a multiplicity of causes and historical dimensions and residual issues that you won't have a one-size-fits-all solution for. So which means the incoming chair is still going to inherit you know, the SADC forces who are in the DRC. And then another issue is in Mozambique, with the withdrawal of SADC troops, there's a big threat of there being a security vacuum. So it's not very clear what will be in place. And the issue that has puzzled many analysts is that while SADC announced the withdrawal of troops in Mozambique, we heard Rwanda, which had deployed troops bilaterally in agreement with Mozambique, announcing that it would deploy 2 additional battalions, which leads us to wonder what sort of intelligence reports SADC received and then Rwanda received on the other hand. So some suggest that after SADC has withdrawn, there may be you know, bilateral arrangements, like a country like South Africa may decide to go and support Mozambique bilaterally. Then we still have some residual tensions in Lesotho, the kingdoms of Lesotho and Eswatini, which SADC had deployed its mediation mechanisms like the panel of elders to frequently go and facilitate the dialogues, national dialogue, and the reforms in Lesotho. So these issues still remain there. And from a political side, we've seen a number of countries significantly in the recent elections, like in South Africa, where we got electoral outcomes which were unprecedented. And with today being a very important day with regards to what sort of government would be formed in South Africa, it remains to be seen whether there would be whether violence or disputed electoral outcomes, as we've seen some parties approaching the courts. Not only in South Africa, we had Madagascar recently. We are also expecting a few elections this year in Botswana, in Namibia, and Mauritius. And it remains to be seen how the incoming chair would deal with such issues on the political landscape of the region.
Right. And just as a way of actually closing down our conversation, I like the fact that you pointed out of sort of what I could coin as a security threat in times of elections and the like, and so on and so forth. And it begs me to ask you this now, what sort of steps perhaps SADC could take to sort of preempt potential security challenges?
With regards to disputed electoral outcomes and election-related violence, SADC has what is called the Principles and Guidelines Governing Democratic Elections, which is the policy framework which guides the organization. They also have in place a strategy, the SADC strategy on the prevention of election-related conflicts. So this is what would guide the SADC Electoral Advisory Council, the Mediation Reference Group, and the Panel of Elders, who are the mechanisms, institutional mechanisms, which are deployed if and when there are such electoral tensions. They would then make recommendations to the chairperson of the organ and the chairperson of Sadc, who would then, in concert and consultation with the Summit of Heads of State, take a decision on the appropriate interventions. But more importantly, they've reformed their way of observing elections from election observation just being an event to it being a cycle, such that observers are deployed in the pre-election phase, during elections and post-elections, so that with their presence it can serve as a deterrent for any elements who were planning to cause disruptions or some form of instability.
Right. Dr. Malebang, time is always a major factor in conversations, and I don't have to beg us to end our conversation here. Thank you so much for instilling us with all that information with regards to Sadc in peace and security.
Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Right. And that, of course, was peace and security expert Dr. Gabriel Malebang, basically just giving context to the visit that is by the chairperson, who is the president of Angola, João Lourenço, who's actually in the country of Botswana today, and the reason why he's there, as well as some of the things that which Sadc as a region is doing in terms of having to deal with the peace and security, as well as just the status, the overall status of peace and security here in Sadc. Coming up next, it is sports discussion. This is BTV News. You are on Botswana Connects. Good afternoon.